Welcome to this very special edition of the KJ Masterclass Live, the show which ensures that you profit from your time spent here with experts, either through their industry insight, information, or simply learning from them. And today we have Lisa Cox. She's an author, TEDx speaker, business owner, and internationally awarded thought leader. And she's on a mission to empower and educate and motivate audiences to create a more inclusive world. Welcome to the show, Lisa.
Hello, thank you very much. It's great to be here.
You are welcome. Welcome to the show. Welcome to India in this online form, Lisa. And I'm sure not just in India, but a lot of people across the globe will benefit from what we are going to talk right now. We'll talk about how one can transform diversity into empowerment, like you have done for yourself. And before we come to this, let's understand a bit about more about you from you itself. You know yourself, so that people know who they are listening to, about your journey or background, so that people know more about you.
Sure. So I have an advertising, marketing, communications background, 2 university degrees, and that was my life working in advertising agencies for several years. Everything was going really well. I was getting promoted, getting awards, getting all the external validation of a successful career, I suppose. And then the proverbial hit the fan in 2005. I had a brain hemorrhage, like a stroke, and died twice in hospital. So I spent the next 3 weeks in a coma, 2 months on life support, and over a year in hospital after that. First year in hospital was really, really tough. My left leg, all of my right toes, and none of my fingertips were amputated. I still have my left thumb. And they're all of my external disabilities and scars. I'm like a patchwork quilt, really. But there's a lot of invisible scars and invisible disabilities that people don't see. So because of the brain injury, I'm over 25% blind. My speech has been affected. I also have a number of other conditions like epilepsy, chronic pain, chronic fatigue, and all sorts of fun things like that. But I've these days combined my professional background with my lived experience to help brands, businesses, even individuals who want to be more inclusive, create more inclusive content, but aren't quite sure how to do that. So helping them navigate the nuances of disability inclusion.
Right, right. So I want to understand from you, Lisa. You mentioned about uh, tried twice in hospital. So,
Yes.
what is it that you actually want to convey to people about? Because it is not easy to, you see things from very close, you see about, everything of this world, also about the other world, how life can be so transient and so small in that sense. So I want to understand about your motivation, about your understanding of life, about purpose from that moment onwards.
So I think, I've had a lot of people who've had really big experiences in their life say the same sorts of things. They have an epiphany about, I want to lead this certain sort of life. And in some ways my life has changed a lot, but in other ways it hasn't really changed, because the same roles and values that I had before my disability, I still have today. But I know some time ago I read a piece for the Huffington Post about what actually happens when you die. And this isn't anything to do with religion. So regardless of your background, your religious and spiritual backgrounds, this has nothing to do with that. But there's this notion that when we die, there's angels and all of these things that happen. But the truth is, as someone who's experienced, nothing happens when you die. Absolutely nothing. And I'm not saying that to be a party pooper and to dismiss anybody's religious beliefs or anything. But the point of that is to say, if you have something that you really, really are dreaming of doing and really want to do it now. Don't wait until the afterlife and all of those sorts of things. do these things now, say that thing, do that thing, be that person that you want to be today.
Absolutely. Be that person that you want to be today. How did your life change uh, after you came out of hospital, and the way you started looking at life itself?
So, like I said, life changed a lot, but in other ways, it hasn't changed at all. So, after hospital, I had a lot of adjustments to do. I'm now a full time wheelchair user. I don't have a leg. There are all sorts of things I have to do differently, but there are plenty of things that I still do the same and it's still a part of me. I met and married the most incredible man about 11 years ago, and we live in Australia now with our dog. But that that first year in hospital was really tough because on one hand, I was really, really upset and deeply depressed that life was just over. I just could not see any bright future for me now that I had all these disabilities. But on the other hand, completely contradictory to that, I was immensely grateful because my parents were told that when they first got the call, come to Melbourne. Lisa may not be alive in the morning. The head of the largest intensive care unit in the Southern Hemisphere said that I was by far the sickest person there, and they were told they may have to turn off my life support at some time. Obviously, that didn't happen, but I was so grateful to just be alive, even though life was very different and certainly not stereotypically great. It was pretty horrible. It was a public hospital, um, and it was yeah, really wasn't a nice thing to be experiencing. But at the same time, I'd done a lot of traveling in my past and witnessed, unfortunately, some really horrible poverty and things like that. I knew that even though I was in a public hospital bed getting terrible hospital food, how lucky was I? Because in an air conditioned room with 3 meals a day, I was really quite fortunate in so many ways. So I tried to have or tried to keep that perspective as well, because I knew it would be very easy to slide down into a hole of why me, poor me. And I certainly did have moments like that, but I had spent a lot of time over the years doing things like playing sport and everything else. And if that taught me anything, it's that when you fail or if something goes wrong, it's how you react to that situation, not necessarily what happens, because no amount of self pity and all those sorts of things was going to get me out of the situation I was in.
Right, Lisa. Like, right. So, when you were faced with challenges, physical challenges, and then out of the hospital, how did you find the system in terms of, people with disability? Was the system uh, there to help, or there was lot to be desired? How did you see it? What would you like to tell people about, those in the system and outside it, about disability? What more can be done? How should people look at this whole thing called disability?
Okay, it's a huge question and a great question as well. So going into the disability community, I had friends and family in the community, and I was an ally, but I really didn't know that much, to be completely honest. And when they first told me that I was going to be disabled for life, I'd be in a wheelchair, have my leg amputated, be partially blind, all of those things, I was devastated. But I later realized that was because I had over 24 years worth of media stereotypes in my head, stereotypical messages that told me that everybody with disabilities could lead a rich, fulfilling life, have friends, relationships, all the things that so many people with disabilities have today. I just had these stereotypes in my head that I could be a Paralympian or I would be this person to be pitied and never have a future. Now, 20 years on, I know that none of that is correct, but I'm working so hard to change that in media marketing and advertising because they're incredibly influential and powerful industries that shape social attitudes. Because I don't ever want anybody to feel like I did all those years ago. Every year, thousands of people around the world acquire a disability. Thousands of parents are told their child is going to be born with a disability or has been born with a disability. And I don't want anyone to feel like I did when it's something that we can change.
Right, right. So you talked about, uh, disability, the portrayal of disability in advertising. What
Mm.
is it that you don't like about it? What is it that you want people to, uh, change within the advertising about disability? I don't remember much about, about this. So for a common person, how would you like to explain about, how they portray disability in advertising? Maybe we have seen it, but right now I'm not able to recall anything from this part of the world. So that will be helpful if you can help us understand.
I'm not sure what it's like over there in India, but it's not great here in Australia. Certain research has shown that even though we're the world's largest minority, approximately 20% of the global population, we make up 1% or less of primetime advertising representation in primetime advertising. So a really, really simple way to think of it is that there's misrepresentation and underrepresentation. So we're either not shown at all, or if we are, we're shown as stereotypes, as the villain, or as something to be pitied, or those sorts of tropes that come up. But one way to include us is just to make us part of a scene. For example, if I was writing a script, which is something I did in advertising, I'd have 5 people sitting at a table. There's no reason why one of those people can't have a disability. And integrating disability into advertising, but other sorts of popular culture like film, marketing, fashion, doing it seamlessly. So if you haven't seen it on Indian television, that could be that it's there, but you just haven't noticed, which is a great thing because when you are including disability in any sort of pop culture, be it advertising, marketing, film, or fashion, you don't want to make it tokenistic and make a big song and dance about it. And oh, look at us, we've got disability, because it shouldn't be a big deal. It shouldn't be a big thing. It should really just be that seamless inclusion that you just happen to have a disabled character in the scene.
Right, right. Now, a lot of things are changing in terms of media also. Mainstream media is just not the only one. Now you've got a huge sort of social media, a lot of, independent platforms where people are making a lot of content. And there are millions of content creators.
Yeah.
How would you like to tell them, to look at this aspect and include the right messaging about disability in their content so that they can play that whole revolutionary role in in changing the world in this aspect and actually make a difference in this world?
There are some really great content creators out there with disability, but if you're looking to include disability in some way, shape, or form, the key is to include the voices of people with a disability. So if perhaps you're not including them in the ad, then at least include them behind the scenes on the other side of the camera or in the production process in some way, be it a big scale television commercial or a small scale online clip. But the great thing about all of the independent channels that have come along, they used to be the gatekeepers, and there still are on a lot of mainstream media, who decide who gets to go on the pages or on the screen. And usually it looks like a certain person. So over here in Australia, it's usually a white, middle-aged, heterosexual, able-bodied man. I'm not sure what it would be like in India, but that's certainly what it's like in Australia. And they're the only sorts of representations we see. So over the years, there's fortunately been greater representation of all sorts of minorities, different body shapes, sizes, ages, all sorts of things and abilities as well, of course. And that's great to see because it really does reflect our society. But
Right, right, Lisa. Yeah,
it's not
carry
just an important thing to do because it's socially good, but for all the business owners out there, that's my background in business, is it's smart business as well. Because if you think about it, just to put my marketing hat on for a moment, the ROI on inclusion is really quite high. UN Women have recently done some work with the Unstereotype Alliance that was showing a 6% ROI through disability inclusion. So it's not just this thing we do for social good, but it can also be really, really good for business because it's a 20% market share, that give or take a few percent, depending on what sort of the world, what part of the world you're in. 20% market share that you're really leaving on the table by not including disability in the conversation.
Right, right, Lisa. One last thing I want to understand from you is about people with disability, whatever way they get it, either from childhood or later on, how should they prepare themselves in terms of mindset? Many a times, you meet three people and their mindset may not be that positive about it. But then there are a whole lot of people who are very, very understanding of these things. There is this community. How does a person with these challenges get the best for themselves that is there, either through society, either through community, either through government facilities that are there but may not be away not they may not be knowing about it? How should they look at all these things, because they get what they actually is there but they don't know about? Yes, Lisa, are you able to hear me, or is it a freeze frame? Yes, Lisa, can you hear me? Okay, let me see if Lisa can join back. Otherwise, most of the things that we wanted to learn from her, we have already known. But there is this last question. If she's able to join, we'll ask her that question. If she's not, there are some technical problems that can happen at any time from anything on a live show. And so I'll just wait a few seconds and look at things at it. Otherwise, looks like Lisa is, maybe she's having issues with her connection or anything. So I think we have come to learn most about most of the things. And for people, for connecting with Lisa, obviously I will include it all in the show notes. So uh, uh, that's all. I think we'll keep it for this morning on this particular episode of the KJ Masterclass Live. Thank you so much indeed for joining us. Take care.